Hey guys, what's up? It's your boy Parag. Day 21 of the Hard Challenge. It's been 3 weeks of the making, posting every day, TikToks, and all that jazz. So far, I'm feeling pretty good. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night though, so today was a struggle to get out of bed, but feeling good. We did go on the walk as per usual, sunlight for me. I didn't do the workout yet. I'm gonna do it after this video actually. So if you want to skip to the workout, right over there. We're doing pretty good, guys. It's 3 more weeks of content of this type of content until the last day is gonna be August 20th of this challenge, because the 21st I think I'm going out, and 22nd is the trip to Japan. I will be posting or probably live streaming when I'm in Japan, and then when I come back I'm gonna stop uploading these videos because I want to focus more on making proper, like, good content. Because, like, I mean, yeah, like these videos, like, they're not really like that crazy to BH. What I've realized is that if I post every day while I have a full-time job, I don't have time to really like edit and like really like make good content. So but nevertheless, I will keep posting even after I come back from Japan on this account and my main account, Parag the Frog. But hey, if you want to skip to the workout, it is arms day. No, I'm not skipping leg day. To all the new viewers or people that didn't know, I played basketball last Saturday. So that was like, hold up, that was like July 26th. It's been 2 days and my legs and my lower back are still in pain and sore. I'm 22 and like, man, like life is kicking my ass. But anyways, before we get into the reading of the day, let's get into the question of the day. Yesterday's question was, how much time do you waste on things you dislike and what are they? For me, that was just doom scrolling. But the question today is, what is something that you are putting off and why? Something that I'm putting off and why? Oh, I'll probably say like my G test. So for all the people that aren't in Canada or not in Ontario, because I know in other provinces like Manitoba or something, like it's like different. Like Alberta, like their license is like class like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or so. I don't know. But for all the people that aren't in Ontario, to get your license, you get a G1, which is like you have to do some like writing tests and like blah blah blah. G1. Then your road test, which is G2. However, your G2 is like a probationary license. Like, you're allowed to drive alone. You can drive on the highway. There is some restrictions, but I low-key don't even know them. And then the G is like your final test where like you can like you're allowed to go on the highways and do bullshit, and that's like your final license for the G. I don't know how it is in America, but that's how it is in Ontario. I've been putting off the G test for a while because I'm not gonna lie, I got my G2 license like back in like 2023, I think. So it's been like 2 years almost, and or 2022, I don't even remember. But I've been putting that off because I'm not gonna lie, I've just been like I'm like so like scared that the fact that I'm gonna like fail, like I have to like retake the test, and like my card, it expires like 2020. It expires next year, so I got T up. But yeah, I've been putting that off for like a year, like 2 years. However, I did book my G test on September something, so when I come back from Japan, I think I get like a week or two and then my G test. So I'll update you guys on that for sure. But hey, that's a question of the day. Comment down below, you know, what is something that you're putting off and why. All right, book of the day. We're gonna do this is a lot of mofo reading, but guys, we gotta stay strong. All right. The malicious with a critique of freedom. Such inquiry is bound to generate unease or resistance from a number of intellectual quarters. The first comes from a sexual liberations for whom to criticize freedom is tantamount to being in reactionary phase of hysterical moralism and purity. To quote her last name is like Paglia Stern, condemnation. However, this position is itself equivalent to the claim that is a critique of economic freedom and the deregulation is a return to a hysterical desire to build kolkhozes. Well, I don't know what that even is. The critique of freedom has been the prerogative of conservatives as much as bro, I'm not gonna lie. One thing I don't like about this book already is they're using two big words that I don't understand. Like, what are we talking about? Bro said conservatives as much of emancipatory. What does that even mean? Anyways, scholars and nothing about it calls for a return to moral purity, shaming, and double standard. The critique examination of the current state of emotional and sexual freedom is in fact examination of the current state of emotional and sexual freedom. Is it in fact a return to the core questions of classic sociology? What is the fault line between freedom and anomy? Okay, hold on. I'm gonna have to look at what does that even mean? What is this spelling of this word? ANOMIE. This word, the lack of usual social or ethical standards. So they're basically being a dickhead, basically. Just to dumb it down for the viewers that are like me, because I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what that word even means. I ain't gonna lie. I interrogate how the intrusion of capitalism in the private sphere has transformed and disrupted core normative principles of that sphere. A second objection can come from various academic disciplines such as cultural studies, queer studies, and gender studies that have traditionally been preoccupied with a disenfranchisement, thus implicity or I can't read for shit, or explicitity, making freedom the supreme value orienting their scholarship. As Axel Honneth correctly claims, for moderns, freedom trumps most of all values, including equality and justice, all in their different styles. Libertation, feminines and gay activists, literary scholars, and philosophers have viewed freedom as the most vulnerable of all goods and have thus been reluctant to focus on its pathologies, except when it takes the form of the tri-critic of neoliberalism, or when it refers to narcissism or utilitarian Hinduism. Bro, have you guys ever heard these words before? What? Fostered by the consumer markets. To this reluctance, one may offer two different types of responses. The first has been very formulated by Wendy Brown. Historically, semitorically, and culturally protein, as well as politically exclusive, freedom has shown itself to be easily appropriated in liberal regimes for the most cynical and unemancipatory political ends. Bro, why are we talking about politicals, bro? Anyways, I will not disrespect this book. If that is the case, then freedom is a social arrangement we should always be eager both to preserve and to question. The second response to the objection follows from the first and is methodology, relying on David Bloor's principle of symmetry. Examining different phenomenon is a symmetrical way without presuming to know who is good or bad, victor or loser. We may suggest that freedom should be examined critically in a symmetrical way in both the economic and the interpersonal realms. If we critically scholars analyze the corrosive effects of freedom in the realm of economic action, there is no reason not to inquire about these effects in the personal, emotional, and sexual realms. The neo-concelebration of markets and political freedom and the seemingly progressive celebration of sexual freedom should be equal scrutinized, not in the name of neutrality as Richard Posner demands in his study of sex and reason, but in the name of more encompassing view of effects of freedom. The principle of symmetry is relevant in yet another respect. Critiques of current sexualization of culture come from several culture quarters, from movements for from asexuality that reject the sensuality of. They're using too much words of like lite, like ideality. Like I'm not trying to be okay. In definitions of healthy selves from feminists and psychologists worried about the effects of sexualization of culture, and finally from Christian majors and mostly Muslim relations minorities living in Europe and in the United States. All these critiques are uneasy about the intensity of sexualization of culture. Feminist scholars are the only ones who have paid attention to this unease, and anthropologists like Leah Abu-Lughod and Saba Mahmood have criticized Eurocentric models of sexual emancipation from the standpoint of the subjectivity of Muslim women, inviting us to imagine other forms of sexual and emotional subjectives. The critical examination of sexuality in this book does not stem from a predominant impulse to control or regulate it, but rather from a desire to historize and contextualize our beliefs about sexuality and love, and to understand what in the cultural and political ideals of sexual modernity may have been hijacked or distorted by economic and technological forces that conflict with the emotional ideals and norms held as essential for love. Next page. If this work is transversed by implicate norm, it is that love, in all its forms, remains the most meaningful way to form social relationships. A final possible objection to my query has to do with the looming presence of the work of Michel Foucault in the human and social sciences. His Discipline and Punish has been widely influential, spreading the suspicion that dichromatic freedom was employed to mask the process of surveillance and disciplining entailing by new forms of knowledge and control of the human beings. Interesting. Sociologists devoted their attention to surveillance and viewed is this French? Foucault. Freedom as a liberal illusion, undergirded by a powerful system of discipline and control. In that sense, freedom as such was a less interesting objective of study than the illusion of subjectivity than freedom creates. Yet, at the end of his life, in his cours at the Collège de France, Michel increasingly paid attention to the relationship between freedom and governmentality. You see what I'm saying? They always end it with L-I-T. Why? Since when was governmentality a word? Okay, bro, whatever. I'm not a novelist, so, I ain't gonna complain that much. That is, to the ways in which the idea of freedom in the market had redefined its words, a field of action. My book subscribes to the late work of Michel from the standpoint of cultural sociology of emotions. It views freedom as indeed a restructuring of field of action, as the most powerful and widespread cultural frame organizing the sense of morality, conception of education and relationships, the fundamentals of our law, visions, and practices of gender, and more broadly, the basic definition of selfhood of modern people. For a sociologist of culture, freedom is not a moral and political ideal upheld by courts, but represents an enduring, deep, and widespread cultural frame organizing modern people's self-definition and relationship to others. As a value of... Sorry, I'm stuttering a lot, guys. Sorry. Hold on, I don't know where I left off. Hold on. Okay, I see it here. As a value of relentless harbored by individuals and institutions, it orients a myriad of cultural practices, the most salient of which is perhaps that of sexual subjectivity defined as a person's experience of herself as a sexual being who feels entitled to sexual pleasure and sexual safety, who makes active sexual choices, and who has an identity as a sexual being. Where Michelle debunked sexuality as a modern practice of self emancipation, ironically protruding the Christian culture obsession with sex, I focus on another question. How does sexual freedom expressed in consumer and technological practices reshape the perception and practice of romantic relationships at their beginning, in their formation, and during shared domestic life? The question of freedom has become even more pressing as the public philosophy and legal organization of liberal politics has privileged one specific type of liberty, namely negative liberty, defined as the freedom of actors to do what they please without hindrance from the external world. As long as they do not hurt others or obstruct their freedom, such freedom is guaranteed by law and cultivated by many institutions supposed to be guaranteed. One's rights and privacy, and that contain little to no normative content. It is the emptiness of negative freedom that has created space that could be easily colonized by the values of the capitalist market, consumer culture, and technology, which have become the most powerful institutional and cultural arenas of modern societies. As Karl Marx, his name is Marx, Marx, remarked long ago, freedom contains the risk of letting inequality flourish unhindered. Catherine McKinnon drives this point abruptly. Privilege freedom before equality, freedom before justice will only further liberate the power of freedom. Will only liberate the power of the powerful. Freedom then cannot trump equality because inequality validates the possibility of being free. If heterosexual organizes and naturalizes inequality between the sexes, we can expect freedom to meet, confront, or naturalize in such inequality. Only rarely does freedom trump inequality in heterosexual relationships. What Isaiah Berlin called negative freedom has let the language and the practices of the consumer market reshape the vocabulary and grammar of subjectivity. The language of interest, utilitarianism, instant satisfaction, ego-centered action, accumulation, variety, and diversity of experiences now pervades romantic and sexual bonds, and thus demands from us a sobering inquiry into the meaning of impact of freedom, without ever putting into question the moral progress that the struggles of feminist and LGBTQ movements represent. To endorse the historical accomplishments of these movements and to continue their struggles should not prevent us from examining the ways in which the moral idea of freedom has been deployed historically and empirically in market forms, which also appear to freedom. In fact, understanding how ideas and values once institutionalized have a trajectory that is not always the same intended by their proponents will help reclaim the initial ideal of freedom, which was the impulse behind these movements. Thus, if neoliberalism was notoriously entailed a demise of normativity in economic transaction, there is no reason not to ask whether sexual freedom does not have similar effects on intimate relationships. That is, whether they do not mark demise or normativity in naturalization, self-centered pleasure, and instituting sexual competition and sexual accumulation, thereby letting relationships go unregulated by moral and ethical codes. In other words, has sexual freedom become the neoliberal philosophy of the private sphere, a discourse and practice that melts away? We're talking about too much politics, bro. We got chill. The normativity of relations. Yo, my back, I think I tweeted that. Oh shit. Naturalizes the consumer ethic and technology as a new form of emotional self-organization and makes the normative and moral core of intersubjectively less intelligible. While freedom itself has been a powerful normative claim to oppose the institution of forced or loveless marriages, to assert the right for divorce to conduct one's sexual and emotional life according to one's inclinations, to grant equality to all sexual minorities, we may wonder if today that same freedom has not unmoored sexual relations from the immoral language in which it was intentionally steeped. In the same way that contemporary monopolistic capitalism contradicts the spirit of free exchange that was at the center of early conceptions of the market and commerce, a sexual subjectivity tightly organized by consumer and technological culture conflicts with the vision of emancipated sexuality, which was at the heart of the sexual revolution. Because such sexuality ends up reproducing compulsively the very schemes of thought and action that make technology and economically the invisible movers and shapers of our social bonds. Heterosexuality is more privileged terrain from which to study this question than homosexuality, for a number of reasons. In its present form, heterosexuality, aka being straight, is based on gender differences, which more often than not function as gender inequalities. Heterosexuality, in turn, organizes these inequalities in an emotional system that places the burden of success or failure in relationships on people's psyche, mostly women's. Freedom makes emotional inequalities go undetected and unaddressed. Men and women, but mostly women, turn to their psyche in order to manage the symbolic violence and wounds containing such emotional inequalities. Why is he distant? Am I acting too needy? What should I do to catch him? What mistakes did I do to let him go? All these questions asked for a woman and by women point to the fact that heterosexual women feel unculturally largely responsible for the emotional success and management of the relationship. In contrast, homosexuality does not translate gender into difference and differences into inequality, nor is it based on the gender division between biological and economical labor that has characterized the heterosexual family in that sense. The study of effect of freedom on heterosexuality is sociology more urgent because it interacts with the still persuasive and powerful structure of gender inequality. Sexual freedom makes heterosexuality ridden with contradictions and crisis. Moreover, because heterosexuality was more regulated and codified by the social system of courtship supposed to be led to marriage, the shift to emotional and sexual freedom enables us to grasp in a crisper way the impact of freedom on sexual practices and the contradiction such freedom may have created with the institution of marriage that remains at the heart of heterosexuality. In contrast, homosexuality was until recently a clandestine and oppositional social form. I can't read that, I'm sorry. For that reason, it was a origin defined as a practice of freedom, conflicting and opposing the domestic institution of marriage, which used and aligned women and ascribed men to patriarchal roles. This book then is an ethnography of commentary sexuality, which as a social institution has been under the push and pull of forces at once emancipation and reactionary modern and traditional, subjective and reflected of the capitalist, consumerist and technology forces of our society. My approach to emotional and sexual freedom contrasts with various forms of liberation, for which pleasure constitutes a final telos of experience and for which the astounding expansion of sexuality in all walks of consumer culture is the welcome sign that, in Camille Paglian's trenchant words, popular culture is an eruption of never-defeating paganism of the West. For sexual libertines, sexually meditated by consumer market fees, frees sexual desire, energy, and creativity, and calls on feminism to open themselves up to art and sex and all the dark, unconsoling mysteries. Such a view is seductive, but it rests on the naive assumption that the market focus forces the drive popular culture, in fact, channel and consume with primary creative energy. Rather than, for example, spread the economic interests of large corporations seeking to encourage us subjectively based on the quick satisfaction of needs. I can see no convincing reason to assume that the energies tapped into by the market are more naturally pagan than they are. For example, reactionary, conformist, or confused, as a prominent queer theorist put it, Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, who advocated family values, actually enabled the greatest sexual revolution in neoliberal policies, which deregulated markets. Individual freedom cannot stop at the market. If you have an absolute freedom to buy and sell, there seems to be no logic in blocking your sexual partners, your sexual lifestyle, your identity, or your fantasies. Okay, that's the end of the chapters, guys. I'm not gonna lie. I might drop this book. I ain't gonna lie. Like I'm reading this book, bro. They talking about politics and like me. See, I bought this book off Amazon because I saw the reviews. It was really good. I'm like, okay, it's talking about emotions. I'm into that, bro. We like 15 pages in, and they're talking about politics, bro. Hell no. Okay, so I'm gonna do some more research. I might be getting another book, but until then, we'll be on this one. Hey, thank you guys for watching the reading section. I know it was long, but hey, y'all get to see me in my natural habitat. On to the workout. Okay, starting off with some dumbbell skull crushers. This time I'm doing it with flat bench. Usually I do incline, but I'm not gonna lie, incline I don't feel it as much, but with this, I definitely felt it on my triceps. So I think I'm gonna stick more towards on the flat bench rather than incline. And then on to the next workout, we're actually doing bicep curls. However, we're doing it in like the preacher curl way. And honestly, this way feels a lot better because like I don't got my elbow to like help me, you know what I'm saying, blah, blah, blah. This was like 25 pounds. I don't know. It felt good. It actually felt pretty good. And I think I'm gonna stick to this because my biceps were actually like in pain. So that's good. That's good. And next workout, hammer curls. This is 30 pounds, making sure that, there's no assistance, just straight arm. And feeling good. Honestly, it's not too bad. To all the new viewers, I only record one set, but I actually do two. Now we're doing some tricep overheads, not too shabby. This way it was 25, I'm not gonna lie. The form was a little like messed up because it was too heavy. So next set, I definitely lowered the weight. And onto the last workout, just some reverse curls, making sure that my left forearm is big and strong, just like my right. And that's the workout for today. And boom, your boy's looking kind of crispy with the little chain on. I'm looking kind of sexy. Anyways, let's move on to the breakfast. What am I saying? Breakfast, shall we? So for the breakfast, literally the exact same thing. A scoop and 1/4 of oatmeal, milk, some coffee beans, peanut butter, protein powder, stir that all up. Milk, obviously. Then on the side, we got kiwi and an apple. You know what I'm saying? Apple away keeps the doctor's way. I also have some creatine. And usually I mix it with water, but instead I dry scooped it. I'm going to show you guys the video of me doing it because I recorded the first time I did it. And after that, let's go on to the lunch and dinner. Enjoy me dry scooping creatine. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have the lunch. Got some quinoa salad and some chili beef. Literally the exact same thing for lunch, but we took out the quinoa salad, subbed in some white rice to get the carbs in. Y'all see the small plate plus a small portion because what's the goal again? To lose the fat while keeping as much muscle as possible. Well, hey, that's the video for today. That's day 21. Can you believe it's been 3 weeks? That's wild.
But hey, thank you guys for being with me on this journey. We got 3 more weeks left until it's time for Japan. But till then, I'm gonna keep pushing. I'm gonna keep posting, keep streaming, and even then, when I'm at Japan, I'm gonna still keep doing my thing. Even if I'm not streaming every day, I will be posting something every day, either on my story, YouTube channel, TikTok. So make sure y'all are linked up to that. See you guys tomorrow. Peace.